Welcome to Green is Good, raising awareness of each individual's impact on the environment and helping to create a more beautiful and sustainable world. Now, here's John Shigarian, Chairman and CEO of Electronic Recyclers International, and Mike Brady.
Welcome to Green is Good. And Mike, it's so great to be in studio with you for another great edition of Green is Good.
Hard to believe, John, that another week has flown by. Boy, where's the time going these days, huh?
I don't know. Everything becomes more compressed in this digital world that we live in, I think.
When we talk about defending our planet and defending nature, nobody does it better than the folks that we're going to talk to today.
The NRDC, we're so proud to work with them and highlight their great think leaders and they're great visionaries and they're great writers. And they have a great article now that's just coming out in their On Earth magazine, Renewable Energy Catches On in Red America. And this is fascinating, Mike, because, again, we live and we work here in Fresno, California. We broadcast our show from Fresno, California, which would be called Red America.
Well, absolutely. Right in the heart of the Central Valley, Central San Joaquin Valley.
So right off the bat, I know that, you and I have talked about this before. We've had some leaders from the great city of Fresno on with us. We lead the nation as a city in recycling.
Yeah, that is something that we're very proud of. And I had a conversation with someone just a few weekends ago at a rather large gathering over at Fresno State and talking about recycling and just how proud we were here in the city of Fresno that we're number one in the nation.
Yeah, and so if all politics are local, that's what we always talk about. What's more local when you and I talk about different things that we can do to be greener and to help make a difference? Our electronics, which we all are tied to our cell phone and our PDAs now, recycling them appropriately when we're done using them.
Right.
And then also we've talked before about organic food and what we put inside of ourselves and the air that we breathe. We've had shows on all those issues with regards to the localness of these issues that affects all of us.
You betcha. And really, nothing gets more local than what we eat every day. And here again in the San Joaquin Valley, in the heart of Central California, we are arguably the world's breadbasket.
We are now, for sure. And we know that more of the farmers locally are going organic and things of that such, but it's still considered Red America. So we have a writer today on from the NRDC, Michael Behar, who's done a great piece on the renewable energy movement and how it's catching on here. Actually, the article focuses on Kern County, which is right down the road from us. And so this is going to be, I think, a very thought-provoking and inspiring conversation with Michael Behar. So come on back to Green is Good.
If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so excited today to have Michael Behar on the phone with us. Michael's in Boulder, Colorado. And he's a writer. He's written for all great publications like Outside, Wired, Men's Journal, Mother Jones, Popular Science, Discover, and now he has written a great article in On Earth magazine, which of course is a publication of the NRDC, and that article is titled Renewable Energy Catches On in Red America. Michael Behar, welcome to Green is Good. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you for the enthusiastic intro.
John is definitely that, Michael. He is one of the most enthusiastic people I think I've ever met.
Well, we're sitting here in Fresno, California, doing the show with you, and you're sitting, of course, in Boulder, Colorado. So Mike Brady and I have a little experience about living in Red America and being part of the Green Revolution that Green is Good is broadcast right here in the heart of Red America. Tell us about your story and what was the impetus for the story and how did the whole thing evolve? And where did we wind up here? What were some of the conclusions? Start about how you came up with the storyline and how it went when you started doing your investigative work.
Well, I came up with the storyline. My editor at On Earth had heard about some things that Lorelei Oviatt, who's the director of planning in Kern County,
sure,
was doing to encourage green investment in Kern County. But we didn't really have a lot of specifics, and so I ended up doing some sort of preliminary interviews, kind of asking around, asking her, asking some other people, what's sort of going on down there. And I could just feel there was a lot of enthusiasm that how they were approaching renewable energy investment was different. And what really intrigued me, you said you're right in the middle of Red America.
Right.
And you are, and so is Kern, and I am not. I'm in Boulder, Colorado,
Yeah.
which is the exact opposite.
Sure.
And, so instituting these programs here is easy. And what was really interesting to me to see how it was done in a place where you would think there'd be a knee-jerk reaction against anything with the green label or environmental label on it.
Right, right.
And that didn't, as the story unfolds, we find that doesn't turn out to be the case.
Well, first of all, talk about a little bit let's go back to step number one, because I want our listeners and politicians and other folks that listen to our show to get inspired by what we've learned here and what you've learned and what you shared in this great article. What kind of specific steps have the planners in Kern done that have inspired and made it easier or facilitated these renewable projects to get going and get approved?
Well, two things. First thing, they take an overarching approach that anything that comes into the county business-wise has to be good for the county. So all of this is built on something that makes economic sense, that will help the county, that will bring jobs, that will raise tax dollars on property taxes, all of those things. And so it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a green investment. It could be a landfill. It could be a new coal power plant. It doesn't matter. Whatever they do, they look at it, is this good for Kern County? They're not interested in helping wind energy manufacturers in Spain. They want to make sure it's good for Kern. So that's the first thing.
Got it.
The second thing is they've really educated themselves on basically for lack of a better word, the sort of bureaucracy to get things done.
Sure.
California is a very restrictive state for good and for bad. And they have something called the California Environmental Quality Act. And that's basically a very set of stringent conditions that you have to meet in order to do any sort of development project. And because renewable energy is kind of a new thing, and county planners have been around for decades, and a lot of these people have been in these jobs their whole life, they might not know a lot about renewable energy. So in a typical county, elsewhere in the U.S., if a solar investor comes in, it's sort of befuddles the planners, and it really slows things down because they sort of have to learn what the technology is, what's going to happen to the land. They have to sort of gear up in order to even approve a permit.
That's right.
And what the Kern people did, and this is L'Oreal and her team, is they've literally almost memorized the California Environmental Quality Act. I mean, they could quote it from their heads, but they're really good at navigating it, and rather than being a bureaucracy that when a developer comes in and says you have to do this and this and this, and there's all these loopholes you have to jump through, they turn the tables. They make them feel very welcomed, and they sort of guide them through the process, which is not really how you normally, when you go and get a building permit to remodel your kitchen.
Right.
It's like going to war with the county.
Yeah, you're right.
There's always a million things and papers you have to have, and you're always forgetting something, and it's never smooth. They've turned it around. They're saying, well, why shouldn't we make this process smooth? This benefits us.
So you're saying their education, them self-educating themselves, then make it easier to facilitate when entrepreneurs or businesses come to them with these great green projects.
Right.
They're able to assimilate and facilitate them at a much faster rate.
Right. They know a lot about how these different projects work, wind and solar and natural gas and methane, and they understand the technology and the impacts that it could have on the land. And then they also understand the California environmental rules, and they try to figure out how to make these projects mesh with those and explain them to the investors. A lot of these, some of these wind energy investors, some of them are from California, some are from Europe. And,
wow.
So they don't know at all how our rules work.
Right, right.
Same with the solar. And so they need to sort of have their hand held, and that's not something that a county planning department normally will do.
Right.
Their job is more to I'm not trying to criticize county planning departments across America, but sort of set up roadblocks.
Right. So,
and the logic of that doesn't make sense because you want development in your county.
That's right.
So
how many projects do they have ongoing right now? Give an example. I mean, of course.
Well, they just finished. So the Tehachapi wind area has been one that's been developed for many years, since the 80s in Kern County. So that sort of got stuck. Quite literally, because they ran out of power lines. They didn't have any way to transmit electricity out of that area. So they facilitated one of the big things the plan did is help facilitate a huge upgrade to the power lines.
Right.
So that now we can get electricity to L.A. County and all over Southern California from this region. As soon as that happened, the wind energy investors started flooding back in, and so there's projects on private land all around that area, and also further east in what's called sort of Eastern Kern in Mojave. There's another project underway which could be close to the largest solar project in the world. So that's another one that's happening near the San Joaquin Valley. They're building, and some of these are in the article that I mentioned. Another interesting one is capturing methane from cows. You have a lot of cows in Kern County. There's a lot of dairy farmers. The methane that comes off a single cow can power an entire house for a year. And so think about all that going to waste.
Wait a second, Mike. That's some kind of that's a pretty picture, Mike.
Well, honestly,
and that's not even from them passing gas. That's just coming off the manure.
No.
Exactly. And
wow.
and really, Michael, as John knows, anybody that's driven up and down 99 through the central
where that is?
San Joaquin Valley, exactly, that is the smell of money.
Right. Well, it wasn't always the smell of money. It mostly just went up into the air, and permitting that was a challenge for the Kern County planners because you have to pipe the methane to a central cleaning facility. And how do you do that economically and with easements and across private property? So one of the things they did is facilitate this easement process so that all the dairy farmers can link up all their dairies with basically just PVC pipe. And they pump all the methane to one area where it's cleaned and put on the PG&E pipeline.
Wow.
And that's totally innovative. That hadn't been done anywhere else in the country. Without that, you would have to process the methane at each dairy, and at that point, you're losing money.
Wow. So now let's go. So now the strategy that Kern County came up with was the self-education. Then self-education led to facilitation. Mm-hmm. Now that it's sort of going, what is it like now compared to when what's going on? Like, what has the evolution been there, and how is this paradigm replicable across America?
Well, one thing we should talk about to understand that is a fundamental theme in the article, and that is developing these things on private land, not public land. So this is private land owned by somebody versus BLM land.
Talk about the difference so our listeners and Mike Brady and I get to understand that.
So public land is owned by the government, just an easy way to say it. There's lots of different types of public land, state public land, federal public land, but let's call it all public land owned by the government.
Right.
Which means it's owned by us, technically. And we use that land. We hike on it, we hunt on it, we drive our ATVs on it, we fish on it. It's used for a lot of things. It's called shared use land.
Right.
And it's bureaucratically, it's very easy to just build renewable energy on that land because there's much fewer restrictions. And it's not private property, so you don't have to buy the property to put anything on it. We already own it. So at first it seems, wow, we should just put everything on public land because we don't have to deal with private landowners and sale of land and all this stuff. But it turns out that we have a public land for a reason, for that shared use. We don't want to give it all up, and it's also home to a lot of endangered species. Forests. I mean, there's important reasons why we can't just put everything on public land.
Right.
And so that's one aspect of the story. The other story is now when you go to private lands, you're enriching landowners, and landowners like to make money.
Right,
especially in the Central Valley, there is a lot of what they call sort of marginal private land. These are people that own ranches, own farms that may not be producing anymore. The land's dried up because there's no water. A lot of our produce, farming, agriculture has been outsourced. We buy our grapes from Chile now, and we don't buy them from the Central Valley. And so what are these people doing with this land? Well, right now, nothing. And so when you go to a landowner and say, you're not growing anything on your land, I can put a wind turbine on it and pay you money every single month. How are they going to refuse that?
Sounds like a good deal to me.
It's a great deal for the landowners. It's really literally free money.
So when you say, so walk us through this. So private versus public, where is the majority of this development being done down in Kern as the paradigm that we're going to be looking at?
It's a lot of it's really all over. In the Tehachapi region in that valley, there is a lot of patchwork. It's mostly private land. In eastern Kern, which is sort of I think the town is called Ridgemont, or it's sort of Eastern Kern. It sort of borders the Mojave and the Sierra. There's a lot of private land up there that was used for ranching, for cattle, cattle ranching, which isn't a big industry in that area anymore. And so families own this land, and they pay taxes on it, property taxes, but it's not earning its keep anymore.
Right.
And so it's sad because many families who've had land for generations can't afford the property tax, so they have to sell it.
That's a great point,
Michael. And so what are they going to do? Well, in my story, there's a great example of a woman named Susan Hansen who's had this land in her family for 4 generations, and it hasn't been making money, and they were close to having to foreclose on it because of the high property taxes. And then a wind energy company came to them and said, we're going to put up 88 turbines on her land, and now this woman is going to be wealthy for the rest of her. Her family will never have to worry about money again.
Wow.
And they can keep the land. They don't even have to farm on it, although they do. They still raise some cattle on it, but they use it, they go up for recreation on it, and it stayed in their family.
Gotcha.
So there's a huge benefit to that, to private landowners. And when you talk to them about why, it really is, to be kind of shallow, it's all about money. Most of the people I talk to could care less about global warming and the environment and these kinds of things. They're sort of worried about it, but it's not why they made the decision.
Well, and we have often talked, Michael, John and I, with our various guests, that money and environment can actually go hand in hand. There's the green side of the green movement. And as you point out in your article that I'm reading right now, according to when you were interviewing Lorelei, she said this is a red conservative-based county, and we're not Berkeley. We are embracing renewable because they're practical and what is essential to Lorelei Oviatt and her bosses, the 5 elected members of the County Board of Supervisors, is that renewable energy investments are creating jobs and boosting tax revenue. If the icing is green, she says, okay, that's even better. So it is good for the private owners. It is good for the bottom line, and it's great for the county. So again, this looks like, to use the old hackneyed phrase, a real win-win.
It is. A little sort of fine print thing to know that I learned in this process is that if you have a ranch and so you're paying property taxes on it, the fixed amount based on the value of that land, right?
Right.
And if somebody comes, if a company comes and puts a solar, project on it to create solar electricity or a wind project, it raises the value of that land. It makes it more valuable because now that land is earning money. The interesting thing is the difference in the property tax value, the landowner does not have to pay. The company pays and invests it.
Wow.
So when I say it's free money, it really is free money. The landowner spends not 1 cent more.
Wow.
And gets a huge, in some cases, a huge income, 6 figures or more from these things annually. And so that because I was confused by that a little bit too. Well, isn't their land going to cost more and they'll have more in property taxes?
Right.
No,
right.
The investors pay that.
Wow.
That difference. So it really does actually add to the tax base. The tax roll, I think is the term they call it, of the county, which then they can use for their schools and the police department and the fire department, all the things property taxes pay for.
Mike Brady, I think Michael Behar has hit upon the true meaning of green is good.
Well, as we mentioned, Michael, at the beginning of our show, we're talking about the old movie about Wall Street and Gordon Gekko saying greed is good. Well, now this really is a confluence of both green is good and greed is good. It all comes hand in hand.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, so tell us a little bit about what other projects, like the wind projects that you're meaning. Tell us about what are a lot of these projects. If you were to look at 100% of the projects, what percentage is on the public land? What is on the private land?
I don't think I know the exact breakdown, but I would say well into the majority is there's very few projects on the private land.
I got you.
And in fact,
you mean the opposite?
I may get the facts a little fuzzy, but Senator Feinstein has actually introduced a bill, I think it was last year, and it actually was putting more restrictions on green energy development on public land.
So it's really all moving towards the private. This is what you're seeing.
In California, yes. Comparatively speaking, Wyoming, which is another windy place, has tried to do the same thing, but
Yeah.
they're trying to do it a lot on public land, and they have hit a lot of roadblocks.
But is it possible? Are there farmers in other states now, even in red America, that have that land has gone fallow because it doesn't make sense to farm, and they're in the same tax or other financial crunch?
Absolutely. The problem, obviously, if you take the Midwest, is that there's no wind. So
wow.
you need wind and you need sun. So
Sure.
there has to be certain factors. Now,
Sure.
sun obviously is everywhere. So there's definitely potential for solar. Cows are everywhere, so you have the methane potential.
Right.
So there is that option.
What else? Oh, so Michael, we're down to about 5 minutes left. Tell us what, you put a lot of work into this. What did you learn that you were expecting? What did you learn that you were not expecting?
They're related. One thing that I wasn't expecting was that these landowners truly weren't really in it for the environment. I hate to say that, but
that's okay.
I mean, I really pressed them on it, and they would sort of shrug and say, yeah, well, some of them don't believe in global warming. Yeah, I'm concerned about the environment. It wasn't. What's interesting to them is they call themselves sort of stewards of the land. What was important to them is keeping their land preserved, but for reasons that are a little bit different than the way we think about preservation. So that was something very interesting to me. And then what was really amazing is how much. What I learned also was just that. So that surprised me. I think what I learned was that how much these incentives, really work, getting people to make these deals. And one thing that's tough is you have to sort of deal with everyone in the county the same because when you put up wind on one person's land and not on the other, they get jealous, and the other person starts to object because suddenly your neighbor's making a fortune and you're not.
Right.
And so one thing that I learned through this is how Lorelei and her department was really good at sort of trying to play that juggling act and having to appease everybody in this process and make them feel that they're all a part of the process. And that wasn't something really that I expected to find as much.
Hey, Mike Brady and Michael Behar, I mean, who cares about what people's real intentions are even if it's money motivated, but the result is the same, and they are ending, they're netting out to be as green as the real tree huggers of this world, as stewards of the land. The result is still the same, so it's good for them that they're that honest about why they were doing things. So I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Not at all. And this philosophy really should be applied to almost all our energy policy.
That's
in the
right.
United States,
You're right.
There should be penalties for energy pollution or energy waste, and not penalties for the other way. And that way, we're incentivized to actually do that.
That's right.
And go that route rather than just telling us, yeah, you should do this because it's good for the planet. Well, I believe that, but not everybody does.
Is it becoming more of the trend than what you're seeing from writing this article and other things that you're doing, being that you're in the media world and you're a writer, Michael, that green or blue, Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. It's good politics to be green now?
Boy, that's a hard question. I don't think you can make that case for sweeping across the whole United States.
Okay.
I think it's here and there.
Okay.
I think our president is trying to make that case.
Got it.
From a federal level, but
right.
But if you actually, once you're on the ground and you go county to county from coast to coast, it's a checkerboard. It's very different. Some people object to it. I mean, there's a lot of profit in the oil and natural gas industry in some states, and people benefit from that, and so they're hesitant to make that shift because they're already making good money on this industry. Why do we need to go another direction?
Right.
And Kern is a great example because Kern makes a ton of money from oil and gas.
Right.
And they didn't really need to do all this, but they just saw another opportunity because they have the wind and the sun resource, and that was a resource that was going to waste.
Hey, and this is really great news, and your article is very inspiring, and you are very inspiring on the work that you've done. We hope you do more green or more investigative articles like this for the Green Revolution. I think this can only make us a better country and get the information out better, Michael. And I want to give a shout out to the NRDC for our listeners. Go to their great website, nrdc.org, and also see Michael Michael's article online at www.onearth.org. onearth.org. Michael's great articles there. Michael Behar, we are so thankful that you spent some time with us today, and you are truly living proof that green is good.
This program will be available for downloading in a couple of days from our station's website, keyword podcast. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week at the same time for another edition of Green is Good.